Everyone knows Nirvana changed everything in 1991. What gets overlooked is where that sound came from.
Everybody knows this is nowhere.
Not born overnight. Its DNA was already taking shape in the 1970s, built by bands that pushed rock into something darker, heavier, and messier.
You need cool air, baby, I'm not fooling.
These are 7 70s bands that helped invent grunge. Number 7. Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Hear me, I ain't no senator song.
This one surprises people, and that reaction tells you something about how narrowly grunge gets defined when it should not be. Creedence Clearwater Revival was not heavy in the metal sense, but Fogerty often chased a lower, swampier growl, which makes the bridge to grunge feel a lot less far-fetched than it seems at first. What CCR often built their sound around was something grunge would later treat as essential. Grit over glamour, swamp over shine. A rejection of the polished, the pretty, and the overproduced in favor of something that felt grounded, lived in, and raw rather than shaped by recording industry calculation. Fogerty's guitar tone on songs like Fortunate Son and Born on the Bayou has a rawness to it that sets closer to Kurt Cobain's aesthetic instincts than most people would initially expect. The distortion is not pristine, the performances are not immaculate. They sound like people playing with real emotion in a room, which in the era of increasingly elaborate studio production was almost a political statement.
I wish I was back on the bayou. Roll on with some.
Coming up is a band from Wales that most people half remember, but whose influence on the heaviest end of grunge runs much deeper than most realize. Number 6. Budgie.
I can feel it burning in my eyes.
If you know Budgie, you already understand why they're here. If you don't, the fastest explanation is this. Budgie were a Welsh power trio who spent the early 1970s making music that was too heavy for the rock audience, too weird for the metal audience, and too good to be ignored by the musicians paying attention. Budgie operated in a sonic space grunge would eventually move into comfortably, crushing riffs delivered with a looseness that made them feel dangerous rather than precise, dynamics that could pull back and then hit with punishing force, a willingness to let things breathe and then obliterate the breathing space with pure volume.
What in his dream?
This kind of heavy soft tension would become central to grunge. Budgie were already exploring it in the early 1970s. Burke Shelley's bass playing and Tony Borge's riffs on songs like Bread Fan captured a kind of heaviness that felt raw, physical, and organic rather than polished or engineered. Budgie's influence traveled less through the charts than through the ears of musicians. The reason Budgie matter more than their mainstream recognition suggests is precisely because of where their influence traveled. Not to the radio, not to the charts, to the record collections of the people who would eventually change everything. Next up, a band that needs no introduction, but whose specific contribution to grunge is more targeted than people realize. Number 5. Aerosmith.
Sing with me, sing for the year, sing for the laughter, sing for the tear.
This is not about the Aerosmith of the late 80s comeback. It is also not about the power ballads, the movie soundtracks, or the second act commercial dominance. It's about first-era Aerosmith, 1973 to 1979, the dangerous version. 1976's Rocks is the album that belongs on this list. It is one of the most sonically aggressive mainstream rock records of that decade. And its influence on part of Seattle's next generation is easy to hear. The guitar tones are filthy in exactly the right way. The performances have an instability that makes the whole thing sound like it could collapse at any moment, and somehow never does. Steven Tyler, in that period, was not the polished entertainer he would become. He was unpredictable, physical, and volatile as a frontman in a way later grunge audiences would instantly recognize. The version of Aerosmith that matters to grunge history is the wrecked, chaotic, pre-sobriety version. The band that sounded like it was being held together with tape and spite. That specific quality, the sound of something brilliant, barely containing itself, is one of the things grunge would later do exceptionally well. Next is the one that influenced the influencers, the band at the root of almost everything that came after. Number 4, the Stooges.
A call-in from the fun house with my son.
Most people remember the Stooges as proto-punk, and that is true. But on Funhouse, what they captured was bigger than one genre. Iggy Pop and the Stooges released Funhouse in 1970, and in doing so created a document of raw and performative extremity that the music world spent the next 2 decades trying to process. The production of Funhouse sounds like the studio itself was trying to escape.
We've been separated, baby, far too long.
Don Gallucci captured something most producers would have tried to clean up and made that chaos the whole point. Instruments bleeding into each other, the rhythm section sounding like it was attacking the listener, Iggy's vocals sitting somewhere between singing and something that does not fit any neat category. This is one of the blueprints for grunge's most extreme end. Not just the sound, but the philosophy. The idea that rock music should be confrontational, that it should make people uncomfortable, that polish and commercial palatability were not virtues, but compromises. Iggy Pop's stage presence established a physical vocabulary later frontmen would echo. The self-destruction, the confrontation with the audience, the refusal to maintain a safe distance between performer and crowd. All of it traces back to stages where Iggy was doing things almost nobody had seen before, and that nobody who witnessed them ever fully forgot. The Stooges did not sound like grunge. They sounded like the thing that made grunge necessary. We are in the top 3 now. Number 3 is an artist whose entire career became a permission slip for everything grunge stood for. Number 3, Neil Young and Crazy Horse.
Everybody knows this is nowhere.
The specific Neil Young that belongs on this list is not the acoustic troubadour, not the Harvest-era songwriter, not the gentle voice over finger-picked guitar that defined one side of his catalog. It's the electric Neil Young, the Crazy Horse Neil Young, the Neil Young of Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere and Rust Never Sleeps.
Everybody knows.
And the live recordings where the guitar solos stretch so far that most musicians would have pulled back. The guitar playing is one of the defining antecedents of grunge. Young's lead tone on Crazy Horse recordings is deliberately impure. It wavers, it sustains past the point of comfort, it finds notes between the notes and stays there. The solos are not displays of technical proficiency. They are emotional excavations conducted on a Les Paul. Kurt Cobain's connection to Neil Young was not subtle. He quoted Young in his suicide note. That is not a casual reference. It is a direct line between two artists who understood roughness, honesty, and vulnerability in strikingly similar ways. The other piece of Young's influence that goes beyond the guitar playing is the permission he granted to be unfashionable, to resist the slickness of whatever the commercial mainstream was requiring, to make music that sounded like it came from a raw place, especially when that meant it sounded rough, unfinished, and resistant to radio. Two left. Number 2 is a band whose heaviness became a language grunge spoke fluently. And number 1 changed the definition of what rock music was allowed to be. Number 2, Led Zeppelin.
You need cooling, baby, I'm not fooling.
Led Zeppelin's contribution to grunge is enormous and operates on multiple levels. The most obvious level is the heaviness. Page's riffs on tracks like Whole Lotta Love and Communication Breakdown established a template for distorted guitar as the primary vehicle for physical impact in rock music. The way the guitar sits on early Zeppelin recordings, raw and forward and slightly threatening, is something Seattle bands would later echo. But the less discussed element of Zeppelin's grunge DNA is the space, the dynamics, the willingness to build something massive and then pull it back to almost nothing before detonating it again. When the Levee Breaks is one of the most influential drum recordings in rock history, and its fingerprints are on more grunge recordings than most people consciously notice.
When the levee breaks, have no place to stay.
Bonham's drum sound on that track, captured at Headley Grange with the kid in the hall and microphones hung in the stairwell, influenced the way later producers thought about drums. Plant's vocal approach also matters here, more than it gets credited. The blues screaming, the falsetto extremity, the willingness to use the voice as a raw instrument rather than a controlled one, fed directly into part of what Chris Cornell became. Cornell's debt to Plant was not incidental. Zeppelin also taught grunge that a rock band could contain multitudes, could be heavy and delicate, aggressive and melancholic, commercial and strange, sometimes within the same song. And now, number 1, the band without whom grunge, as both a sound and a mindset, simply does not exist. Number 1, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath in 1970 did something that had no precedent. They took the blues, slowed it down past the point of comfort, and built a song out of weight, dread, and the space between the notes. That approach, heaviness as a structural principle, rather than an ornamental one, is the foundation of everything grunge built on top of it. Kurt Cobain talked about Sabbath. Soundgarden talked about Sabbath often. Alice in Chains are in many ways a direct line from Sabbath's heaviest material to a Seattle studio with better production values. The tempo, the deliberate embrace of darkness as a tonal center, the willingness to make music that felt oppressive rather than just loud, all of it runs through Iommi's hands on an instrument he should not have been able to play after losing his fingertips in a factory accident. Ozzy's vocal approach over that music established something grunge would later refine, the melody sitting on top of something truly threatening underneath it. The contrast between the accessibility of the tune and the darkness of the sound creating a tension that made the whole thing difficult to dismiss. Grunge had many parents, but Black Sabbath was the one that mattered most. 7 bands, one movement that changed everything in 1991. Which one of these do you think had the deepest influence on grunge? And is there a band we left off that belongs on this list? Tell us in the comments.